Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, to the next episode of Chartered Accountants Worldwide Difference Makers Discuss. I'm Sinead Donovan, President of Chartered Accountants Ireland, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Kudzai Zendara, who is the representative from Chartered Accountants Scotland. And he is going to talk to us about his career, about his life experiences, and really just try and impart some knowledge to the listeners about the importance of being a chartered accountant and some of his learnings along the way. So, Kudzai, you're very, very welcome. I'm going to start off by asking you to maybe introduce yourself to the audience, maybe talking a little bit about your journey to date and about where you are currently working and the role you're in, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So thank you very much. My name's Kudzai Zendara. I'll kind of start at the beginning, right at the beginning, but quickly. Born in the UK, lived in the UK till I was about 13, moved over to Zimbabwe for all my high school, then came back to the UK where I studied at the University of Manchester, and from there pursued my career with PwC in London, which is where I studied as a chartered accountant with ICAS. And from there, sort of after working for 4 years or so within external audit, I joined the Royal Bank of Scotland, which is now more commonly identified as NatWest Bank, where I worked across finance and treasury for about sort of between 8 and 9 years. And that was great fun. And then I joined Standard Chartered Bank, where I've been for the last 4 years or so. And I currently work in the treasury markets function of that bank in a sort of balance sheet and liquidity management capacity.
Brilliant. And okay, so from the UK to Zimbabwe, back to London, and tell me about your schooling in Zimbabwe. Was there a rationale for going there for schooling? And
Yeah, sure. Good question. So look, whilst I'm born in the UK, I'm Zimbabwean originally. So both of my parents are from Zimbabwe, which for anyone who's kind of not familiar is in Southern Africa. The rationale really was that I still at the time had quite a lot of family still in Zimbabwe as well. And so myself and my two brothers, my parents were very keen for us to experience a African education, both in the sense of the formal education system, but also just the benefit from sort of the life experience of growing up there. So myself and my two brothers all moved with the intention that we would stay there for the duration of completing high school. So for myself, actually, I moved right at the beginning. So I did the full sort of years of high school and then came back. But that was the intention. And to your experience of how was it, I guess it was great when you move as a child as well. In my experience, these things are fun. There's kind of school, as it was at the time, is like a ready-made ecosystem that you just are able to dive into. Took care of all my sort of social network, friendship network. It was all formed at school. I was very fortunate that I was able to start day one of secondary school, so I didn't have the difficulties of trying to integrate midway through a school year. So it was great, and it was a very different school life to kind of how it is here in terms of your very forced, that's the wrong word, but you're really encouraged to get involved in all aspects of school life. It's not just about going and sort of doing your learning and coming home. There's a whole real vibrancy to being a student in school in Zimbabwe.
brilliant. That's great. That's great. And I suppose you kind of found your own community there and your own tribe and your friends and all the rest, which is desperately important as a youngster.
Yeah, I mean, the friends I made from school are still my friends today.
Yeah.
And even though I don't see them because we're all over the world, I don't see them as often, but we speak regularly on WhatsApp, and I know if I happen to land in a country that one of them is in, or vice versa, like it will be as though we've sort of not been separated.
Brilliant, brilliant. And then tell me, why chartered accountancy? What was the driving force to bring you into the profession?
driving force. That's probably the two main ones. I would say the academic uh, system and curriculum in Zimbabwe, as it was at the time, was very traditional um, in terms of the subjects that you studied and the career paths that you pursued or encouraged to pursue thereafter. So what I mean by that is it was quite common to sort of be in school and think, right, I'm either going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant. And for me, accountancy and the subjects that I studied at the time that would pursue me to that path were the ones I was most interested in. So I enjoyed it, frankly. Might sound nerdy, but I enjoyed sort of business studies and accountancy. When I went to uni, I studied an accountancy related degree. And when I was at uni, there was no doubt in my mind that I wanted to join one of the big four. I interned with KPMG. I then joined PwC as a graduate. So for me, I was always minded to move into accountancy. It's probably an honourable mention for my eldest brother and my dad are also chartered accountants, so that may have influenced, albeit they never uh, actively said, this is something you should do, but subconsciously it may have had an impact as well.
Very good. It's funny, the amount of family connections in the profession is huge, and so I think you're right. I think there undoubtedly is a subconscious bias there when you have a family member who's a chartered accountant. Um, so Kudzai, can I bring you up to today? So I know one of the main reasons that Chartered Accountants Scotland has put you forward as their representative is because of the work that you've done in the D&I space in particular, and I know that's something that started for you in Standard Chartered. Do you want to tell me a little bit about how you got into the arena and what your driving forces are behind it?
Yeah, sure, I will do that. I mean, I think it really took off to a large extent when I was at Standard Chartered, but I think earlier on in my career, and even when I was in school, I have done things around sort of just giving back. So whether that's in Zimbabwe, we used to run a night school teaching program actually at the time. So how that worked was the staff who worked on the grounds and around the school would come in once a week after the school timetable had finished, and they would be taught English, maths, and science by
Wow.
students within the school. So I
Wow.
volunteered for that. It was a way of kind of giving back and helping them to pursue their
Wow.
what we would call O levels, but the equivalent is GCSEs.
Wow.
So that's something I did. So I've probably always
Yeah.
had some form of helping out in some way, whether that's
Yeah.
work experience or initiatives like that. But to your point, and when I'd say got into it a bit more seriously, so if you go a few years back, I think the death of George Floyd was within the UK and around the world a kind of awakening for a lot of people and a catalyst for people feeling either compelled or comfortable with sharing their life experience. In particular, what being an ethnic minority within whatever country they were in had meant for them. And I think while that was going on and people were sharing stories, and I was seeing organizations also kind of responding to what had happened by reaffirming their core values and beliefs, I myself also felt compelled to share my experiences of growing up as a Black person within and outside of the workplace within the UK. Now, I did that by sending an open letter to the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank. Um, I emailed him one evening with an open letter to shout out to my wife because she was very supportive and encouraging of that. So I did that. He responded within about 24 hours and sort of said, "Hey, thanks for sharing this. How about you and I speak one to one?" Which was not something I was expecting. But that took place. We had a very sort of positive conversation, and that was a very positive experience for me. I shared that online on social media. So I shared the the open letter and just the conversation I'd had with the CEO as well. And I think through that, I mean, I was kind of naive to how LinkedIn works at the time, but it got quite a bit of traction, and I guess it was viewed within and outside of my workplace and landed on ICAS's radar as well. And ICAS invited me to be a part of their ED&I network. So that's how I became involved with ICAS. I'm a member of their ED&I network, and through that, and I have been for the last 2 years or so, and through that we've had a good partnership.
Wow, that's amazing. There is so much to unpack there. So if you don't mind, I just want to kind of drill into a few things. So key decisions there, key moments was obviously the decision to send the open letter. Was there a particular ask in that of the CEO? Or when you said that you were surprised that maybe he or she, I'm not sure, responded so quickly, what I suppose that's another sliding doors moment. So there's the decision for you to send it, and then the response of the CEO. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, sure. So I think the decision to send it, and I probably didn't explain it sort of well enough as to why I did it. So I think at the time, it felt like a lot of the conversation was very US centric, right? So what the world had witnessed in the US was clearly quite
Mm-hmm.
barbaric and wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the conversation and analysis also seemed very centered on US society. And in my mind, I was thinking there is a version of this in the UK. It's not the same. It's not as outward and as brutal and as in your face and as obvious, but there is a version of this in the UK that doesn't appear to be either getting talked about or acknowledged. What
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing are people, CEOs, etc., talking about the events of the US, perhaps not realizing that within their own organizations and on their own doorstep, there is a lived experience which is similar that people can identify with. And so my letter was more around, I just want you to be aware of what that experience in the US has been like for me within the UK. So it really was more just to share and open eyes, so to speak. Um, I would say there wasn't a particular ask beyond just, look, I hope you find this in some ways useful and enlightening, and it spurs some
Mm-hmm.
form of change within our workplace. To say things are bad with the workplace, but some form of
Mm-hmm.
recognition and awareness, because my experience can't be completely unique. I'm sure there are others who have had something similar. So that's what made me send it. I think sliding doors moment. Yeah, I mean, look, when the CEO of a global bank um, takes the time to respond, not delegating the response to someone else, but respond
Yeah.
directly and in a way that
Yeah.
says, let's speak one to one. That was definitely unexpected, but really positively so. And I think for me, it really encouraged me to um, feel more comfortable with speaking up, to help to play a part in normalizing the discussion of such things within the workplace. Um, it made me want to get involved with what our bank does in general to try and
Mm-hmm.
foster sort of diversity and inclusion. So, in short, it gave me it put a spring in my step to contribute. And it made me feel very comfortable about, if there's one thing it did, it made me think, if I can feel comfortable enough to reach out to the CEO and he can be kind enough to reply in the way that he did, then I feel comfortable enough to approach anybody with uh, things like this.
Yeah, yeah. Two key takeaways for me there, just as you spoke, and I think I found that really, really actually inspiring. Was the two key takeaways is one, as you say, have the courage to send, thoughts and opinions, and because that did take courage on your part to send that, but then the leadership that the CEO showed by responding personally, and as you use the word with kindness there, that's such an important trait of a leader. So yeah, I think there to me are the takeaways. So from that, you got involved in, I think, was it the E or G group in Standard Chartered, and as you say, then it opened doors into ICAS, and I know you're the inaugural, or were the inaugural chair of the ICAS Black Members Network. So you've kind of continued the journey on through the profession.
Yeah, yeah, precisely. So yeah, I did get involved firstly with the Standard Chartered
Yes,
Employee
sorry,
Resource Group.
thank you.
For anyone who hears ERG and is wondering what that
Yes,
is, that's the
sorry, thank
Employee
you.
Resource Group. So, no, that's fine. So it's essentially a network led by employees for employees that focuses on racial diversity and equality within the UK bank. Um, and yeah, I got involved with that as a committee member and led sort of several initiatives over a period of years. Um, Latterly, I then got involved with ICAS as well. And as you mentioned, through being involved in the ICAS sort of ED&I committee, within that committee, it was kind of suggested, if you like, the idea was mooted as to
Mm-hmm,
having something for Black members and students, I would say,
mm-hmm,
but something that basically allows people to come together, network, share experiences, share stories, give back. You know, there's a real growing need of people who have sort of gone through their careers who say, look, I would love to speak to the next sort of generation of students coming through, share my career story, see how I can help them navigate and or avoid some of the challenges that I experienced coming through. Um,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
just provide some guidance. So, and you know, we are live with that currently. Um, we have plans to kind of hold events through the year and become bigger than what we are at the moment. But you know, as a start point, we've definitely got a good sort of an ambitious pipeline ahead of us.
That's brilliant. Congratulations. And look, I mean, a real shout out also to ICAS, because I was at an event there recently with your institute, and I learned about the foundation that ICAS have, and the foundation that is 10 years old this year, and how much that has opened up the profession and the qualification to people that it would not necessarily have been able to enter the profession and study. So I think the whole DE&I value set and belief in ICAS is phenomenal. So shout out to everybody there. Um, Kudzai, you mentioned there your wife and the impact and influence of your wife and supporting you, and I know you have family as well, from our previous chat. Talk to me about kind of the balance of work and family, and it's a busy world, and how do you navigate all that?
Yeah, sure. Of course, there's no way I could not mention my wife or my two kids. They are central to my
That's
life
lovely.
completely. I think it's a really interesting question because if I think about how my career has developed, which I think will be similar for a lot of people, right? Right from the beginning, my experience was within a big four. People may be outside of a big four, but that period where you are studying to pursue your qualification is intense, right? You're working, you're studying, you're giving up free time. It's pretty intense. Even once you've finished and you've obtained your qualification and you're sort of going for post qualified roles within your existing institution or leaving to pursue roles elsewhere, you know, you are generally taking on more responsibilities and often being quite willing to give up a lot of time to work to try and progress, etc. Now, that is always easier to do when the only person you have to look after is yourself, right? It becomes more challenging as you
Mm-hmm.
go through life, and that's even before kids. Whether you start, dating a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever, as soon as you have to start apportioning time, it becomes more challenging, especially so, as I'm finding, when you have dependents, you have a wife,
Mm-hmm.
you have, every relationship needs to be nurtured. They don't just flourish by chance, okay? And there is a recognition that you have to, there's a recognition that you have to give that work is busy, but as far as possible, I need to make time for the other things as well. And so one thing that has definitely been my experience is that raising young children requires a partnership. And in that case, I'm talking about my wife. It is not a burden that can be solely met by either person. It absolutely requires two people to try as far as possible to meet each other in the middle in order to discharge kind of those parental responsibilities, and sort of give your kids the time and attention and the love that they need. So, yeah, to work as intensely as possible when I'm in the office, but when I leave the office, I'll try as best as possible to leave work. Now, that's not always possible, and sometimes the work follows me home, and my wife is very understanding of that and the sacrifices. Well, I'm sorry, what that means for her, because it takes so that requires some adjustment on her part as well. But trying to balance work and family, yeah, it's hard, and it requires two people. It requires a partnership. I'd say that.
Yeah, look, and thank you for that. It got a little bit choppy there in the middle, but I think what you were saying was that the importance is about being present. So when you're in work, and when you're at home. And I think they are really important takeaways, because in this manic world where we're on call 24/7, and we've got phones, we've got iPads and all the rest, it's multitasking has become a buzzword, but actually I think when it comes to family, we should actually just quit the multitasking and focus on them when we're with them. So look, I think they're great words, and it's really refreshing to hear that from a dad, because sometimes it can just be the narrative of a mum, and a working mum. And I think it's really good to hear that rhetoric from a dad. So thank you very much for that, and continued continued success in juggling it. Um, so, talk to me a bit about your professional career. So, you've obviously kind of decided on the banking route, on the financial services route. Was that a deliberate choice? Were you very focused on where you were going and had a North Star that you followed, or how did it all come about?
Fine. So I've never really had a North Star, so to speak. Other than the
Mm-hmm.
fact that I knew for sure I wanted to pursue accountancy, and I knew for sure
Mm-hmm.
that I wanted to work within the Big Four, and specifically, I knew I wanted to work at PwC. I think thereafter, I have always tended to, if you like, do a job until the point in time that I no longer enjoy doing it, or I see the industry changing. Now, those two things probably require a bit of explanation. I think in terms of my time at PwC as an external auditor, that was probably a move that was, the catalyst for that move just became a realization that this wasn't what I wanted to do with my career, right? And at that time, I thought, gosh, there's been a lot of news around banks and the financial crash. I don't really understand much about banks. Might be interesting to go and work in a bank and figure out what this is kind of about. So that's really what influenced that move. And that's how I ended up joining the Royal Bank of Scotland. I think thereafter, within banks, one of the things that I've definitely witnessed and experienced, and this was not the case when I was at PwC, is you do see how your industry changes when you're working within it. So banks have changed massively through to financial failures, through to regulation, through to changes in operating models, cost pressures, etc. That doesn't have an influence on hiring and firing, but it also has an influence on the type of work that is topical within a bank and valued within a bank. And you kind of at times have to move with where your industry is moving in terms of the knowledge that is being requested and that is being valued. And so for me, I have tended to sort of, as I said, I started off in a finance role and a sort of more pure management reporting role, and into areas like treasury where there's bits to do with regulation, etc. At times, I have seen where the industry is changing, and where the focus of management and regulators, etc., is, and I've tended to move towards that. It's also happened to align with my area of interest. So really, what I'm trying to say is, I've tended to do roles until I've not enjoyed doing them, until I've thought, actually, I think it's more beneficial for me to go and now acquire this type of experience and skill set because I think this is where the industry is going and this is what's going to be valued. They've tended to shape my moves. So it's not really been a North Star. It's more been a where can I develop next? I think the consequence of that is, you know, in my case, it feels like I'm often moving out of a comfort zone into a place of just unknown, uncertainty, discomfort, which ultimately I think is serving me quite well, but it does take quite a lot of resilience.
It does, and it's interesting that you've acknowledged that move out of the comfort zone, but that if you step out of the comfort zone and try and work through it, you kind of get into the growth zone, and but it's getting that balance right as to when to step out and for how long to step out. It's interesting that you say that one of your driving forces is the enjoyment factor. And whilst that shouldn't be interesting, it should be a no-brainer. I don't think everybody acknowledges that it is really important to enjoy what you do and enjoy your work. And you've obviously nailed that, Kudzai, and really follow your instinct.
Yeah, and I mean, I think let me expand on that a bit more, right? I think it's important to realize that the thing that you enjoy doing today is not necessarily going to be the thing that you still enjoy doing multiple years down the line. So I've always gone into a role and loved doing it for a period of time, but it gets to a point where you think, no, you know, I'm ready for something different. I've taken from this role what I want to take from it in terms of technical skills or soft skills. I don't think spending more time in this role is going to incrementally benefit me much more. There is much more breadth or experience to be gained, perhaps, by stepping into a completely different space. Now, that doesn't work for everyone, but that has tended to be the case for me. But as I said, I haven't necessarily been suffering roles. I've been enjoying roles. But as you grow as a person, as you gain more experiences, as you see more, the things that you want to do and learn change, and therefore it gets to a point once for me I reach that point,
Yeah,
I really
no,
want to go and do something else. So yeah, I've that's kind of how I'd explain that
yeah,
at a point in
no.
time every role was the right role for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and I think that's great advice as well. That as your life cycle changes, your wants and your needs might change. Chartered accountancy as a qualification, do you think it's well set to give us that depth and breadth and the ability to change and navigate changes, or do you think there's something we can do more to educate our new members?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I think, look, for me, the qualification has served me well. It's allowed me to have a fruitful career and a career with growth and breadth, etc. Um, I think one thing that's important to note, acknowledge, is that, you know, the world is always changing, right? And um, that change influences how we work, i.e., use of technology, etc. But it also influences how people want to make money. And it's not necessarily exactly the same way. It's not necessarily just through a traditional path where I have a contract with an organization and I work for my entire career as an employee, etc. So um, I think there is potentially something that the profession can do with making sort of IT proficiency, AI proficiency, an aspect of the qualification. I think, as I've said, things to do with just managing money, whether you're in a sort of numerate profession or not, just the core skills of managing money, managing your finances, investing your finances. Just understanding that there is a difference between putting your money in a bank and investing it in different avenues, and what those avenues are, and what the risks and benefits are to those different approaches. Even that, right? It's quite possible, at least when I did my qualification, to come all the way through your ICAS qualification and have absolutely no concept, recognition, appreciation, or awareness of any of those things. And I think if we're teaching people to be financially literate, not just book smart, that is certainly something that could be a feature of the qualification.
Yeah, and I think all those concepts really mirror what we heard. We did a global think tank there of younger leaders. When I say we, Chartered Accountants Worldwide, we brought a number of younger leaders from the Chartered Accountants bodies together here in Ireland, and we just kind of brainstormed about what the profession needed to do to maybe change or grow with the changing environment. And I think they were some of the things that came out, was just kind of, you know, staying flexible and staying present to the changing landscape, including AI, including technology, including even basic entrepreneurship. I think that became a real point that members or younger members wanted. They wanted to understand more about entrepreneurship and understand more about the risks, as you said there, the risks and the rewards. So look, I think it's all stuff that we need to do as a profession. Kudzai, you're obviously move at a very fast pace. You obviously want to achieve a lot and have achieved a lot. What do you see for the next number of years, or what would you like to achieve, or do you have thoughts on that?
You know, I never like to look necessarily too far ahead, particularly in an industry like this, which constantly changes. And at the moment, there's been quite a lot in the news with banks and change and headcount reductions, etc. But at the same time, I have an open mind. I think, you know, it's really important to make the most of the opportunities that are in front of you. I'm fortunate enough to work for a global bank that's present in about 60 markets. With that comes opportunity, should that opportunity be right for myself, for my family, for my children. So yeah, from a work perspective, it's about, again, growing, looking to take advantage of the opportunities before me, looking for roles that benefit and are additive to the experience that I have, and roles that I know I can contribute positively to. I think outside of the workplace, it's 10 years of blissful marriage for me this year. It's about making sure that my wife stays central to everything that I'm doing, and that our relationship continues to grow. My children are young, 4 and 7. It's about making sure they know exactly that their daddy is there for them every second of every day, and so is their mummy. So I think family are central to whatever is going to happen in my life over the next few years.
Lovely. Kudzai, your value set is very strong, and it's a lovely way to end the podcast. I want to thank you for talking to us, but I also want to thank you for all the contribution you've made to the profession, but also the DE&I space, and very best of luck in everything you do going forward. I'm sure we have not heard the last of you, so thank you and best of luck. And thank you to everybody for joining us today and for staying with us till the end. I have thoroughly enjoyed speaking to the ICAS representative, Kudzai Zendara, and I look forward to seeing you again for the next session. Goodbye.